coming around this corner, and a guy in a ski mask jumped out, and I stopped and pulled out the gun and just started shooting directly at my head. And the first bullet hit me in the neck, and the rest of the bullets hit around me and into the car. By the grace of God, nobody else got hit. That the whole event, when I explained the day, was both a drama and the comedy at the same time. I mean, I can laugh about it now.
We are live here from Bitcoin Beach. I'm super stoked to have my great friend, Peter DeSoto, with us tonight. Peter has actually been an integral part of the whole Bitcoin Beach project from the very beginning. He's often been kind of behind the scenes, and so a lot of people might not know about the role he's played. So I'm excited to kind of talk through some of those things tonight. Welcome, Peter.
Thanks, Mike. Stoked to be here.
Yeah, so I remember the first time I called you and told you, what we were going to do with Bitcoin Beach, and you had a background in economic development. You had been in El Salvador, working on economic development projects for a number of years. And so I think at first you were a little like suspect, but as we kind of got further into it, you started kind of coming over and seeing that, hey, maybe there's some potential here. And I'm trying to remember the first thing you actually participated in. I think you were there when we did the first training. Initially, we were planning on doing Bitcoin Beach, starting it in a place called Punta, which is about 4 hours from here. And we changed that longer term because of what was going on with COVID. But you were at that training. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was, I think it was August of 19. We had gone down just to do a training, just to kind of see how people were going to respond to it. We had kind of gotten the go ahead to move forward with the project.
Well, Andy, do you have the pictures of that we can throw up on the screen there? Sorry, Peter.
I know. I just remember being on the plane. I mean, it seems like so long ago. I mean, we're only talking a little over 3 years ago. And you had pitched this Bitcoin, project and initiative. And it was so far out of anything that I had been involved in. Didn't know what Bitcoin really was. Had an idea. And then on the plane, trying to figure out how to put together a training in Spanish, nonetheless, to a group of people that were in this area of Punta, where you and I have had a place, I think since 2009.
Yeah,
is when so 10 years later.
Andy, go back to that first picture there. Yeah, so that was, we're sitting around the table talking with the community leaders. The local police came as part of that. And I still remember as we were doing that training, later on, there was a bunch of younger people that came. And I think there was 12, 14 that came.
Yeah, we had a good group. And they had very little understanding, obviously, of what Bitcoin was. It was hilarious trying to explain it.
Well, just to get them to download the apps and figure out the wallet, how to set up their wallet.
Exactly. I mean, within 2 months, they had a lot of them downloaded 5, 6, 7 different apps, different wallets. But the part that was cool is there was just an interest, especially with the youth. I think our earlier conversations that you and I had was as we introduced it, it was a lot of the youth and then some of the local business owners, like the gal, kind of third from the left there. She does massages at the different hotels. So her and a couple others immediately started seeing, hey, this is something that I could use in my business. And so it was, even though it was difficult to explain, there was an early interest that was unique. That was pretty cool.
And for a little context, this area of Punta is is one of the poorer areas. It was kind of the center of the war, and so it didn't really develop until recently. It's kind of become a boom town. There's great surf there, and it's I think also because of the Bitcoin Beach initiative, there's been a lot of interest there. But at the time when we started this, it was very, very new for the people, and most of them had never even heard of Bitcoin before, which is a little bit different in El Zonte, where we wound up rolling out the first iteration. The people there had a little bit more familiarity, and that's kind of one of the reasons we wound up deciding to do it in El Zonte first. Was after this training, we realized, oh my gosh, this is going to need a lot of hand holding and a lot of one-on-one, and it's going to be very difficult to do that in a place that we're 3 or 4 hours by car from. But it's been fun because more recently, and we'll get to that at the end, we've kind of come back and we're really focused on Punta Mongo again. So yeah, but that was having you kind of part of that from the very beginning. And then I think shortly after this was when we went to La BitConf in Uruguay.
Yeah.
And that was, look how skinny we were back then, Pete. I mean,
COVID sucks. COVID added a lot, but
I mean, most Bitcoiners are like ripped and fit. They get into Bitcoin and it makes them like fit for some reason.
We went in the other direction.
For some reason, we went in the other direction. So I blame the Bitcoin Beach project. Spend so much time on the computer and answering emails or messages instead of surfing.
Jorge's pretty ripped right now.
Yeah.
Jorge
somehow he's making us look, but he's young though. So
he's younger. Yeah, no,
he's in his 30s. We're pushing 50. So
hey, come on. Give me some time. Still get used to that.
So that was we have some photos from the conference in Uruguay. That's us with some of the folks from Blockchain for Humanity, and they were actually instrumental in a lot of the training that we did with our team when we came back. And that conference was kind of funny. I don't know if you remember, we went there kind of with the idea that we would go to this conference and we would find out, what other Bitcoin circular economy projects were out there, and then we'd basically just copy and paste what they were doing, and that's how it would go. And as we started getting into conversations with people, everybody kept saying, no, you guys are way further along than anybody else. Nobody else is doing Bitcoin circular economies. In fact,
this is 4 months after the first training.
Yeah.
And
they were saying after 4 months, we were further along.
Yeah.
And the funny thing was that most of the Bitcoiners there were actually kind of negative on it. They would say, no, nobody's ever going to spend, they're not going to use Bitcoin to buy their coffee. They're not, what you guys are trying to do is not going to work because of confirmation times and fees. And I'm kind of one of those people that when somebody tells me I can't do something, it makes me like, okay, we're going to make sure we do it. And so, but they weren't all naysayers. This group of folks wound up playing a very big part in what we were doing early on.
I think too, it was pretty interesting. The focus geographically on Latin America, it became pretty clear, kind of the fertile soil. Listening to stories out of Venezuela and Colombia, that was kind of eye-opening for me. Just all the use cases for Bitcoin that's different than what you hear out of the U.S. And so I think I came out of that really, really inspired in terms of what we're doing here, and then just in general, the innovation that we saw with other companies that were coming on the platform. It was just unique. It was because we're kind of starting to live in it here in El Salvador, while I still, live in the States. And I think it's a pretty big divide in terms of how people understand Bitcoin in the U.S. and a lot of the development that's happening here in Latin America, specifically in El Sal.
Yeah, I think that was a crucial time for Jorge also. I had been talking to him about it since, a few months before that when we started the project. But I think for him, it didn't really become real till he saw, these thousands of people that had traveled from all over Latin America who were, devoting their businesses and their lives to Bitcoin. I think that's when he realized, okay, this isn't just some crazy idea of Mike's. This is actually an international movement. And so it was great having Jorge there. And then Juan, who was the kind of the lead for Punta Mongo, he's there in that picture too, in the back with the
with
faux,
the shades.
with the faux mohawk.
Yeah.
Again, look how skinny we were then. I don't know what happened to us.
Hey, you look like your son. That's getting back there.
All right, that's our goal for this year.
Cool.
We gotta get out surfing more and less time sitting in the office chair. Less time sitting in the podcast chair.
For sure.
But yeah, I think after that, you continued to be a big part. This was at the Adopting Bitcoin conference, I think, the first one. And
19, right?
No, I think the first one was in
21.
21, I believe.
Yep, sorry.
And then I don't know if you remember that night. I think we have a video from that. So it was a funny story. We had the conference and we were invited to this party. We were told
it was at dinner.
Yeah, we thought we were going to dinner. They said, we're going to go to dinner with the president and some of the other people.
Official invitations stamped on it.
We had this official invitation. We thought it was all cool. Like, wow, we're going to dinner with the president. And we head off to where we think it is. And then all of a sudden on the side of the road, we see cars and buses and for like a mile before the turnoff for the actual venue where it was at. And we're like, what in the world is going on? And so we walked in there and you thought you were like at a rave. And techno music kind of pulsating. The smoke there's Bukele coming out on stage like a rock star. It was definitely a little over the top. I think the guy's definitely a showman. You can't say anything about other than that.
Yeah, because I think they were playing AC/DC when he was coming out. It was intense.
But that was all I remember that whole night. We thought we were going to dinner, and I never got anything to eat that whole night. We came back and we were starving, but it was a lot of fun to be part of something historical like that, and to know that that's something that will be in the history books. This time that they made the announcement for Bitcoin City, I think then.
Well, I think we'll talk, about my earlier experience in El Salvador, but for whatever, however you kind of view it, the excitement that was there that night because of what was happening in El Salvador was significant. And you could see the opportunity for the narrative to change about the country, because most of how people viewed the country, both inside and outside, was negative.
What years were you living here?
So I first visited here 2003, it's 20 years.
Okay.
And then we lived here 2005 to 2010, 11.
And during that time, everybody was very negative on the future of the country.
Well, I think the stats were that El Salvador was the most dangerous country non-wartime in the world, if not top 3. So just because of the murder rate. So it was like 10 to 12 murders a day during that time. So that's when we lived here. So to go from that to seeing 2,000 people, excited.
Well, and all these foreigners that had come in for the conference. It used to be
scared.
You couldn't get people to come to El Salvador. They're like, no way, it has the highest murder rate in the world. There's no way I'm coming to El Salvador.
Exactly. You had a lot of aid workers, a lot of humanitarian expats, but that video, you see people from Europe and other places just feeling like this was the place to be. And that was a different feeling than what we had experienced when we lived here.
And I think that's the first time you really saw that excitement and the impact that Bitcoin was having, not just on the project in Bitcoin Beach. You had seen that, but it was the first time I think you really realized how this was gripping the whole country and really the world, as all these people from around the world were excited about what was happening here.
Well, that day, if you remember, I think it was the first time we did the surf contest and we did the swim contest, and it was just a packed week of events. And again, kind of going back to the youth, just the level of engagement and enthusiasm and positivity that just kind of spilled over from the project was rad. And then ended up with fireworks and Bukele throwing t-shirts into the crowd. So that was fun.
Well, I remember too that the surf contest, Cash App stepped to the plate, and
it's like
I think gave us like
right?
25 grand for the surf contest. And so
you and I didn't get anywhere close.
No, we didn't even dare to enter the surf contest. But yeah, all the prizes were given out in Bitcoin, so it was all sats, and it was fun to be a part of that. There was so much excitement there. And then you've continued to kind of be involved, coming down frequently for trips. And then this summer, we went to France to speak at the Surfing Bitcoin conference. There's us up on stage with Chimbera, and that was a lot of fun. I was a little bit surprised because most Bitcoin conferences are very international and everything's in English. I was not aware till we were there that this was the first time they had any English speakers, and so it was very.
Oh, it was the first time.
Yeah. So it was a very
it had been
French.
All French.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why it felt like a very French conference. But it was still, we had a blast.
Yeah.
And it was interesting too to get a different view of Bitcoin in a country where people are using Bitcoin very differently. Mm-hmm. So in the crowd there, it wasn't really about circular economies. It was about, store of value and digital gold and
banking.
And I think quite frankly, they're just a long way behind where El Salvador is at this point. But it was great to see, I think, even from that perspective, realizing that El Salvador is leading the way and the developed world is going to have to catch up with the developing world as far as Bitcoin adoption goes.
Yeah, I mean, that session, I think when Chimbera was sharing, you could see people's real, even admiration would be a good word, on not only his story, but the involvement that him as a local Salvadoran, along with obviously Ore and the entire team that's been a part of it, just how far they've come so quick. And the comments after was pretty significant, with people really wanting to hear what El Salvador's done. And again, being down here for almost 20 years, it's like super cool to see El Salvador as the contributor, not as a poor country, but as an innovative country.
Yeah, instead of being 10 years behind, they're 10 years ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was interesting too at that conference. I'm used to being at Bitcoin conferences where everybody is familiar with the Bitcoin Beach story, but you realize there's a lot of people there that don't go to a lot of other conferences and maybe aren't involved in the broader Bitcoin world. And so it was the first time they were really understanding how it was being used in El Salvador. And I think it kind of blew their mind that, wait, you guys can just buy your groceries with Bitcoin. You can, pay for your taxi with Bitcoin. So it was fun. It was fun to feel like you're from a place that's, in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
So a little bit of the backstory on how Peter and I became friends. We're both from San Diego, but ironically, we actually met in El Salvador. He was working with an NGO here, but also pastoring a English-speaking church. And we went to attend that church and really enjoyed our time, and was chatting with him afterwards. And I remember asking him, what's up with your voice? Did you got a cold, or, were you out late last night? And it's funny, at the time, I think you just kind of like, yeah, I'm a little under the weather. You didn't want to get into it. But later on, I kind of found out the backstory of why your voice was like that. And I remember thinking, man, if that were me, I'd have been like bragging about it, how hardcore I was and how cool it was that, I had that, not a cool experience, but a very dramatic experience. So you're always very, humble about it. But I would love to have you share with the audience kind of your story in El Salvador and why it's so significant for you now to see El Salvador improving the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, we first came down 03, and there was an NGO called Enlace that still functions in the country and does some just really cool work.
Who's that skinny guy there?
That's well, a long time ago. But that was probably one of my favorite projects we got involved with. You see all the people working. That's all volunteer work. So the kind of my first trip down here, you kind of had this juxtaposition of intense poverty in communities, but matched with the people that just are incredible in terms of their commitment to each other, their community, spiritually. So it's easy to want to be a part of that. And so I was working in a business and started coming down more and more. And in 05, we made the decision to move down as a family. We had 4 kids. We had just had our last 6 months old. So everyone thought we were crazy. And I, to this day, think I was crazy to bring 4 kids down. But, we were just drawn to not just helping. You always hear a lot of people talk about helping the poor, but solutions that we actually felt were contributing and doing something that was actually working. So I came down, was part of the nonprofit. I got a chance to work all through the country. So it was a really unique experience because we had projects that ranged in topography and different types of communities, and worked with different people, different organizational structures. So with the city, with local community groups. And I think the part that was so encouraging but also discouraging, that kind of leads to Bitcoin, was you've got people that if you pick them up and you put them in the US, they would be so significantly successful. Just the ingenuity, the hard work. Salvadorans are just the cream of the crop. And you would put so much effort, and they would take 1 step forward and 2 steps back all the time. And we would, for example, be doing a housing project or water project and get to know some of these young leaders and start building relationships with them and get excited. You'd come back the next week and 2 or 3 of them would have immigrated up to the States. And so during that time, got a vantage point of why people left El Salvador to go to the U.S. And they weren't just some statistic. They had become friends and had become significant people that were doing great things, but got to the end of the rope. They literally felt like there was not opportunity economically in El Salvador, and with the violence that was going on at the time, had very specific, tangible threats and dangers in a huge part of the country. And so there was just this huge pressure on people to leave. Then that said, they still continue to move forward. I was always blown away by the tenacity of the Salvadoran people to, keep working as hard as they did. Sometimes it's projects as simple as latrines or improved stoves or retaining walls. They get excited about things that we take for granted so much. So we came down in 05. I didn't know Spanish, even though my last name's DeSoto. So we took a year to try to, pick up some dirty Spanish, but it really started getting traction. And that's when, the big event happened when, it's been it's just past 16 years since I got shot.
So tell us a little bit about that. I think we have some photos from that time. If you can pull those up, Andy.
Yeah, so it was January 18th, 2007. We were working in the area of Morazan, which is in the east side of the country, about a couple, maybe 100 kilometers, maybe not that much, maybe 30, 40 kilometers from the Honduran border. So pretty far up there. And we were building a medical clinic through the local community and church. And we had our team, construction team, kind of media team. And on the way back down, we were coming around this corner, and a guy in a ski mask jumped out, and I stopped and pulled out the gun and just started shooting directly at my head. And the first bullet hit me in the neck, and the rest of the bullets hit around me and into the car. By the grace of God, nobody else got hit. There was another car behind us and a second shooter that was shooting. We found shells down behind the car. So found myself, on the side of the road with our team, about an hour from any type of town, with a bullet in my neck. And it was a challenge to get out. We had a couple of people in the car that kind of knew how to get back, but we had to race to get to a medical clinic that was up in Ciudad Barrios. And
it was a pretty basic medical clinic. I think we have a photo there. So, really looks like a classroom with a few gurneys and some IV bags.
It's that the whole event, when I explained the day, was both a drama and the comedy at the same time. I can laugh about it now, but they took me in, and I have a bullet in my neck. They had me walking. They took x-rays of me walking around so that they could get the camera right. And they didn't know really what to do. And so we had our team there, but I had a lot of adrenaline going. And, I think, through our faith and just having just having the security that God was with me, I was able to start directing traffic and telling people what to do. And so I told people to start calling back to San Salvador, and we were able to get connected with some friends at the embassy that were trying to look for helicopters. There was like 3 in the country at the time. And so it took them about 3 hours to locate one of those Hueys that the U.S. had donated, I think, during the 80s and the 90s. So they had to fly a Huey from San Salvador to pick me up. The only place to land it was at a prison, and there had been riots. So they had to coordinate with the warden to close the prison, and it had been Visitors Day. So they had to move everybody out to land the helicopter. So, and it goes on, the story, but
Well, didn't they almost drop you out of the side of it or something?
They did. That was probably 3 hours, 4 hours from the time I got shot to getting picked up. On the way out, they buckle everybody else in, and I, for some reason, laying kind of crosswise in the helicopter. They take off, and I feel myself slipping out, and my legs are kind of dangling over the side, and I felt like I was going to fall into some poor lady's backyard and call it a day. So from there, we got to San Salvador. We went to Diagnóstico, the hospital, which your family really knows well.
Yeah.
They're going to donate a wing to you guys for that hospital. And really good doctors, but people didn't know this hospital. There's a couple hospitals in El Salvador that had great doctors. So
yeah, Diagnóstico is a great hospital. I would rather go there than hospitals in the U.S. for most everything.
Yeah, so they got me in. They realized, and I don't have the picture up, but the bullet, it entered, and I had just been turning in the right direction, missed my jugular by a centimeter, and missed my my trachea by a centimeter. I was just turned when the bullet entered, so it lodged in my esophagus. So they realized that they were going to have to take it out, and they get me prepped. I think it was around 11 o'clock. By the time they got me into surgery, I was shot sometime around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's like 9 hours later. And as they were prepping me, there was an earthquake, and we were told it was about a 6.0 earthquake. So the entire hospital started shaking right before I went in. So it was quite the day. they went in, were able to take out the bullet, and yet within the first 2 weeks of recovery, through one of the tests or through the bullet, somehow both my vocal cords got paralyzed. One completely paralyzed and one's partially paralyzed. So that's why I've got such the sexy voice that I've got. But it was an incredible experience, to go through. And I think, when we have been down here, because we moved back in 2011, we stayed for another 3 or 4 years, continued to do work. And one of the main reasons is I didn't want my family to not like El Salvador. I felt like if we left after the shooting, it would have, they would never want to come back. And I didn't want that to be the end of the story. And it wasn't. I mean, we spent 3 more years here. I think you and I met 08 is I think when we first met, either 08 or early 09. And we bought our property in 09 and 2010. And so, the kind of the beginning of what has become the work that you and I have been able to do together. For me, it started with, experiencing what a lot of people experience down here, which is violence, and being able to have at least a small picture of what it feels like for that to hit you personally, and it kind of, I don't know, created a ruggedness of not wanting the shooting to define myself, my family, or even El Salvador. And, for us. And I think what's been rewarding is in all the work that we've done since, there's just kind of an immediate credibility that I walk into when I'm working with people in the communities. There's a respect. They call it cariñoso that I feel from the friends that we've had down here, and just the length of time now. I mean, it's been 20 years coming down. So, that's the story in a nutshell. You and I, we decided to move back because our kids were getting into the high school years, and they all wanted to do high school back in the States. And so we moved back in 2010 and 11. But we found this piece of dirt in Punta, and Mike and I, you and I, when we went out there, because it sits on the surf break, remember taking our wives out there and our kids, and we were like, you see how awesome this is?
We were so excited.
It's like, this is paradise. And walking around thorns and bugs and
cactuses.
Hot. It was hot. There's nothing out there.
I think my wife fell down the cliff as we were trying to go to the beach.
Yeah, and but we saw something out there. The natural beauty on that side of the country. I mean, the entire country is gorgeous, but I think because Agua Fria, the town, and that whole area had been kind of cut off during the war, there was just a lot less buildings and infrastructure. So kind of the pristine nature of the beaches out there, even this day, even though it's growing a lot faster now, it gripped you. So,
so you can see from the photos that was the before, and I remember even then we were going out there with the owner to verify there was the right lot, and some locals came over and they're like, "Oh, people surf over there." And we're like, "Oh, really? Huh, that's interesting." They're trying to play it off. We're like, "Hope this guy doesn't realize what a great surf break this is here."
Well, it's funny. The guy that sold it to us lived in San Salvador. He had not been to his property in 30 years.
Yeah.
Because there was this kind of fear of the eastern side of the country. It was seen as the wild. They used to call it the Wild East. If you looked up The Lonely Planet back in 2003 and 4, it was the Wild East, and it was, a place to be scared of. And you and I got out there and felt like it was the best place in the country. But we didn't want people to kind of know this nugget that we had discovered out there.
Well, I think even at that time, the surfers knew about that place. It was such a good break, but there was this rumors that you would get shot if you tried to drive out there. And
I was the worst spokesman to tell them otherwise. I'm like the worst spokesman on how safe El Salvador.
No, it's totally safe.
It's great. Just learn to duck and you'll be fine.
Remember when we were at that gas station that one time and there was a mission team down here and we were in line and the one girl was like, "What are you guys doing here?" And we're like, "No, we live here." She's like, "Well, isn't it dangerous? I'm kind of scared." And I'm like, "No, it's totally safe. I mean, my buddy here got shot in the neck, but other than that, like, I haven't heard of anything."
Oh man, they look like they seen a ghost. They raced out of there. That was hilarious. That was funny.
But yeah, that piece of dirt that our wives thought we were crazy for buying became this beautiful place in Punta that's kind of served as the basis for the Bitcoin Beach work and the other kind of community work that we're doing there. And so it's kind of was a way to keep you tied, I think, to the country in a special way. And, being involved with the project all along, I don't think we would be where we are without your involvement in it. And specifically, you've taken up as point man for the stuff in Punta Mongo. And so it's been so great to see that kind of develop more and the potential there.
Yeah, it's been just super rewarding to watch the kind of natural progress out there. I think one of the main values that you and I had when we bought the place was that it would be not just, we love to surf, love to enjoy our time. It's gorgeous, but that it would be a place that both shared the location with people that were doing work in the country. So I think one of the first things we started doing out there is we built was to allow aid workers, missionaries, others that were doing stuff to stay out there, and that created kind of a flow of people out there. And then
I remember as we were first starting, I remember us going down there when there was nothing on it and kind of praying over the property and talking about how it could be used, beyond just as a surf retreat.
And then just, really treating people as neighbors. And remember the first time meeting Juan and Nettie and others in the community, they treated us as neighbors, because we didn't come in with this vision of creating some huge hotel or resort and, trying to make money. And we just kind of slowly, as we built, we're asking them, how can we help? And so I think one of the first things we did, there was a water project that Luxembourg had done because they didn't even have water out there. That's how, early in stage of development they were. And they were bringing water from the tank and the well down to as many people as they could, kind of right to where our property is. And they had done a really good job, but they had run out of money to buy piping. And so it was a few $100. It was nothing. And we donated the piping, and just that one gift, they still talk about it because they were able to connect, I think 9, local, people to that water project through what we gave. And, over the 10 years, we didn't try to go in and do big stuff, but you're just trying to listen. How could we be good neighbors? And so I think it really kind of grounded us in that area, so that when Bitcoin came, it didn't feel like we were these outsiders coming in trying to pitch a project, which unfortunately happens a lot with development. You got a project and you try to come pitch it to people. It was like, look, we've been here. We've got this opportunity. Can we share it with you? It's Bitcoin. I don't even know what it is, but we'd like to share it with you. We're going to give you some. And I think that even that approach was super helpful to understand how we were going to present it in Zonte. The starting small, working with youth, doing things that provided some immediate impact. And then the where that's grown, which I think has just been, so cool. With it's been 2 years now, 3 years, where, as you launched in Zonte, we wanted to have a place in the community that could kind of be a rallying point for education and recreation. And these were some of the things that they were saying they wanted. So we started with doing a soccer field there. And that soccer field, like if you show pictures of the site, dude, we were skinny. That's like the theme. The theme of this podcast is stay skinny, surf a lot.
And you get back out in the water.
Back out in the water. Yeah, so there it is. That was taken just a couple months ago. That soccer field, they had asked for a smaller one that has turf, but we did it right. We did a full design, brought in an architect and a construction. Doma Architects will pitch Doma.
All paid for in Bitcoin.
All paid for.
We got the architect and construction company to start accepting Bitcoin.
Yes.
That was one of the conditions of the project. So
we paid everything in Bitcoin, and I think to pitch Doma, they were enthusiastic about it. There was like this, they do a lot of high-end homes, and they've just get so excited about doing something that brings this kind of value. So
a free pitch for Doma. If you're looking to build a home here and you want to pay in Bitcoin, they're the ones you want to go.
Milton, Daniel, you guys are the ones. But we dedicated this to, I think 21. It's been
the field.
The field.
Yeah. So we did the field first because we wanted to see how the community would utilize it, wanted to make sure it was not something that would go to waste. And so we kind of took a wait and see approach to see if they would just trash it or if it would just kind of sit there empty.
Yeah, we had no idea, but again, it's not just that it was a soccer culture, because you kind of think, they play soccer, but they had, when we sat down, they had a few youth that were a part of a leadership team that were already doing some pretty cool organization with the different towns along that stretch. And so they're like, no, we've got organization to bring to this. So if we could get a field that's quicker, faster, but also something kids could play, older people could play. And to date, I think the only night that they don't play. The other thing is we want to do lights because it's really hot out there. And I don't think it's super typical in these communities for them to play soccer at night. So, we lit it really well. It's from 2:00 in the afternoon till sometimes 10 o'clock at night, every night of the week. And it really has become the centerpiece of Agua Fria and Putumayo.
Yeah, that village never really had kind of a center place for the people to come together, and the town was not very cohesive initially. There was a lot of people didn't know their neighbors, and we've seen just this real transformation over the last couple years as they're playing soccer together, and it's been fun watching that kind of really revitalize the community there.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of development, a lot of expats that are moving in the area, buying property, and I think because there's such a positivity there. Last time, just a month or two, when I was out there on a night where they're playing soccer, you've got people that instead of staying in their houses and just enjoying the view, they're coming and bringing their kids. People from France, people from the U.S., from Canada, a lot of different places, and their kids are getting to know the youth from Agua Fria. So there's this just real kind of extended, desire and will out there right now to improve and to kind of build upon what's happened. And then we built the kind of community center that you see in those pictures.
Shout out to Bitfinex for the donation that allowed us to build that.
All in Bitcoin. And we started a year ago English classes teaching in the school that was just kind of a rundown building. But through Bitcoin, we hired a teacher from San Miguel who comes out every Saturday, and it's just done a phenomenal job. 3 classes or sessions have gone through. So we built the classroom out there, and I think you saw some of the pictures in there to teach English, not because it was our idea, but as we talked to the community leaders out there, they want to know English for their businesses, for just the overall development. And I think that's one of the things that Bitcoin's been a part of, is just kind of opening up the awareness of people in that area to development that's coming, whether they like it or not. They're either going to participate and benefit or be swept aside. And so by the initiative, but also by them being able to use Bitcoin, there's a lot of people now using Bitcoin in Punta, local people. One of the families that lives right next to the school, Carmelo and his family, they have done so well selling pupusas and food every night when there's soccer fields, that they're building a second story to build a restaurant, because I think the new road is going to go right past their house. So they're preparing. They want to speak English. They want to be able to reach that clientele. So it's been rad.
No, it's been so fun to see the way they've kind of stepped up and how well they've kept up all the facilities. They have there's other places in El Salvador, litter's a problem, but you go on that field, you don't see a speck of litter. They have all these regulations, and they've really done a great job keeping it up. And I think
Juancito's kind of the police out there. Whatever part. Our guy we hired, Juan's a great story. Juan we hired just to help with the house and to help manage the property. But through it, it's gone from, I think, grade school education, and now being a major part of the initiatives out there. We took him to Uruguay, so he was a part of that, and now he's really kind of
first time he'd ever been on a plane or out of the country or anything.
And now, he's doing, full management of projects and money and coordination with all of our work out there. So just seeing the opportunity for people to grow in their leadership and in their growth has been cool.
So one thing I want to kind of dig a little deeper on is just how you have seen, from your perspective, Bitcoin impact people in kind of secondary ways that people don't talk about a lot of times, because you were doing economic development long before Bitcoin, came to El Salvador. Before Bitcoin was invented, you were doing economic development. And I know we talked a lot about, the discouragement of, seeing a little momentum come about, but then seeing you lose that momentum. The overall just kind of sense of dismay and like every year is going to be worse than the last in El Salvador, and that the only thing people can hope for is to go illegally to the U.S., and kind of the destructive cycle that would create as all these kids grow up without their parents around and then become prey to the gangs. So what would you say from your perspective that you've seen, or what would you say to people that say, well, Bitcoin hasn't had an impact here because everybody's not living in houses like they live in the U.S.? That's some of the crazy things we get sometimes is, well, I still see some shacks and some houses that don't look like the house I live in the U.S., so Bitcoin's not working. And which having lived here for so long just seems crazy, but would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah. I think I go back to when we were doing, very specific economic development. We would do, one of the major initiatives was microloans. And so specifically money getting in the hands of small businesses. And there's a lot of success in, the stuff that Eunice had done, Grameen Bank had done with microloans. And so it was, and that's like, 05, 06, 07. Yeah, you would get, I just remember the discussions we'd have. You'd get to a point where on the micro scale, there was a ceiling. You couldn't help into medium-sized businesses, or you couldn't help a lot of people take what they were doing in those businesses and turn it into personal wealth or any kind of substantial educational awareness on finance in general. It was really,
or just to save in general,
or just to save,
yeah,
just to save, like the concept of assets. I mean, we always used the term asset-based development, which believe in, but it was a lot harder to do than it was to write about or to say, right? So, I think, to try to like say that Bitcoin is this panacea that solves all problems is errant, but also to criticize it after just 2 years of it beginning to operate in the country, because what I remember our conversations were often it's about scratching our heads in how a more macro development approach could help with what was going on with the micro approach. There just seemed to be all these macro forces that were pushing down, whether it was the gangs, whether it was all the different economic hardships that the country was having. So there was an opportunity to build new businesses, to hire young people. So stories of, students getting out of college and not being able to find jobs. I think one stat I remember is at some of the really good schools here, business schools, 1 in 5 kids could get, entry-level jobs. That's super discouraging. And so not having an environment that can bring investment in, can bring companies in, and can help on a broader level, kept us at the micro scale, which was great. We did some stuff that helped. So I think I'm seeing, and we've only been doing it, 3 years. So, development takes a long time to bring the change, but there's already been so much growth in those 3 years where I think those opportunities are here. Companies want to be here. You and I have a close friend who's got an outsourcing company in the east side of the country, and he's got 90 employees, which I think the employees that are there are young. They want to stay. When you talk to them, they're excited about El Salvador. They're aware of the hardships, but they want to be here. So I think there's a lot of macro things that Bitcoin is helping to do that I just didn't see when we were operating here 15 years ago. And then I think on the personal level with people that we talk to, the idea of saving and having an idea of delayed gratification, how to look at assets, how to look at property, even one, and people in Punta, as they start seeing people move in, they're looking, how can I buy property? How can I build? How can I, store wealth? Those are concepts that were a lot harder to do education, let alone to see happen on a repeated basis. And I think in just 2 years for us to see that begin to happen, I think is significant.
No, I think that going forward, we'll see more and more people that are doing development work start to understand the broader benefits of using Bitcoin rather than fiat currency. It just naturally teaches people how to think about money, how to think about time preferences, how to be able to engage with the international world, where like you have somebody that you're employing down here that's an architect, that the only reason that you can have him working for you in the US is because you can pay him in Bitcoin. Yep. Otherwise, it would be too much of a pain to try to pay him every month. So it's opening up all these opportunities. And then broader, in El Salvador, we're seeing all these companies flow in. We're seeing people from around the world. I'm sure for you, it's probably crazy, or than people that have only been here for a short time, but to hear from people from New Zealand that sold everything and moved to El Salvador without even visiting because they believe El Salvador is going to be leading the way forward. People from Japan, people from Australia, people from all over Europe. I mean, it is really insane the number of people that are flowing in and are searching after a Salvadoran passport. Like, that would have been laughable a few years ago.
No, for sure. for sure. And I think that's where it's good to have patience and humility, to see what Bitcoin can be a part of, and there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be starts and stops, but also patience to see, the effects take hold. It's going to take time for this to be broad based and for people to really have the impact that is possible. But just in two areas, Punta Mango and El Zonte, there's been significant growth that is widespread in both areas. And so if that can happen in both of those communities, I think it's not unreasonable to think that can happen in a broad-based part of the country. And
well, I think for you, even as you're here, we were driving around the other day and you were just remarking like, oh my gosh, they're doing construction here. They're doing this here. You can tell the country is on the upswing.
Yeah. No, I think we were counting at least 100 homes from the bypass that dumps out by Puerto all the way to here in El Zonte. And so, hopefully that provides, opportunities for new businesses and new jobs. I think the other thing that I've experienced just by being around the people that, you've introduced me to and the people in the Bitcoin community is there's seems to be a value of generosity and inclusivity that wants this to go well for everybody. And I think that's something that's potentially unique, where people that are expats coming in can have a different type of relationship with people that are in El Salvador because they share the way that they operate money and the way they talk about Bitcoin. It can be a dividing thing for sure, but I think it also has an opportunity to be something that can bring people together that otherwise might not be sitting at a table having pupusas and just sharing life. And I think getting people to understand Salvadorans and Salvadorans get to understand people from outside the States, that can only be good. That breeds understanding and collaboration and a lot of stuff that sometimes can be hindrance to positive growth. So,
yeah.
Anybody who's bringing a real negative view against it, it's just an invitation to be patient. And with all things, there's going to be challenges and difficulties, but they've been trying to do a lot of different development here in El Salvador for years.
For decades.
And there's been some people that have done great work, but it has not had a long-term sustainable impact outside of pockets. And so, I want to see this be something that gets people just excited about the country in general. And that's what's so fun. We were having dinner last night at Puro Surf, and I was taken back because there were families with little kids speaking English, watching the football game, the NFL, choosing to have their vacations here, not because they're part of Bitcoin or even surf, but because El Salvador feels safer. They want to enjoy El Zonte for just its natural beauty. And so if that can be what people start seeing when they think El Salvador, that's a big change.
Yeah. El Salvador has come under a lot of criticism for the recent crackdown on the gangs. Not so much locally. I think like 95% of Salvadorans are in favor of it. But I know it's something that I've wrestled with. Anytime you have kind of government come in a hard way and the possibility of people going to jail that are innocent, I think it's something we need to wrestle with. But I'm curious for your take as somebody who's experienced violence here, what you think when you see what the government's doing. What are your concerns? Do you think that it's overall the approach they should be taking, or I'm just kind of curious as to your take on it all?
It's hard to form an opinion because it's still so new. I think I can just speak to, conversations I've had in the last 3 to 6 months being down here. There's a pretty broad-based support of the gangs and the violence being taken out of the equation. People that weren't able to drive without paying rent or being extorted, now being able to drive in those areas. I mean, some of the drivers that we employ have to have family members in the States because when their kids were young, they were being either recruited or being threatened by the gangs. So I think there's an immediate impact that people are experiencing that are good. At the same time, human rights matter and process matters, and grounding it in law, in constitution, and in things that can become foundational to undergird the development. Moving fast and what's happening is bringing a lot of excitement, a lot of investment, which I think is great. But if there are shortcuts that are taken that don't ground it in a legal structure and in a democracy that is broad-based, my only concern is that there can be kind of a counter movement against it that could trip up the development. So we'll have to wait and see. At the other time, I mean, in another way to say it, a lot of the people that are being put in gangs, put in the jails, are young kids. Their sons, their daughters, their brothers and sisters, and so there's a lot of families that have people in those prisons, and so wrestling with that and how to do it in a way that's right and just, I think is something that the country will need to grapple with. But how can I criticize measures that make people feel safe?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the paradox that I think people are experiencing. So hopefully maybe they just bought some time, to allow some right growth to come, some foundation to come, so that if they can work through those issues, they've created the space for that.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of things that concern me, but I really don't think there was another way other than coming in with overwhelming force and doing it to the extreme, because if you just tried to do incremental measures,
It hasn't worked.
No. So
No, it hasn't worked.
yeah. What are you excited about going forward here? Like, what would you, 5-10 years out, how would you measure if adopting Bitcoin in El Salvador has been a success? What would you see as these are the markers, these are the things that I want to see. This is the impact I want to see Bitcoin Beach to have.
Yeah, I think the interesting part is it's very similar to what a lot of development tries to do. You want an expansion of inclusion of people in the economy. You want, higher income for people. You want the rates of college grads coming out to find jobs because companies are here. I mean, one of the most exciting things for me is our friend's company that is doing really well, not just because they're doing well, but because of this segment of the population that they're reaching. It's the ones that 20 years ago were leaving in droves because they weren't seeing any opportunity here. And now they're trying to figure out how to have life here in El Salvador. The guy, our English teacher, Ciro, he's texting me pictures because he's going to a Bad Bunny concert in the middle of San Salvador, which sounds like no big deal, but to me was significant that you've got the youth seeing, artists and entertainers and people wanting to come to El Salvador, where that was not happening on a regular basis when we lived here. And so I think that the opportunity would be real, that it would not be just contrived, but that companies would come here. I think just between the landscape and between the geographic position and just between the quality of the people here and the education, it's opportune for a lot of growth. So I would say that would be a measure of success. The other thing, as it develops and a lot of international people come here, that it wouldn't create a big divide in the development between the haves and the have-nots. That's happened in the other parts of the world, where you have, parts of the country that have done really well and left everybody else behind. That Bitcoin can help kind of mediate some of that. I'm not foolish to think that that's not going to happen at some level, but that as the development comes in, that it's providing, opportunity and upward growth for people. So I think, and then the violence continues to decrease. I mean, what happened to me, I can be a little bit light about it because it's been 16 years, but, violence can cause trauma, does cause trauma for the people that go through it. But my entire family has been impacted by the shooting. And I've known countless people in the country who have lost people through violence, and it's devastating. And it can have a very, bad, impact on the society in general. So, if those things kind of continue to move in the right direction, I think Bitcoin will have been a part of, some major, movements in the right direction.
Well, it's crazy to think. I mean, yours happened 16 years ago, but even up till 5-6 years ago, it was still, I think that was some of the worst times was in 16, 17 in those years. I remember our neighbor got shot 40 times. It was the eve of Donald Trump's election. And I was up listening to
in Zonte, right?
Yeah, in Zonte,
okay.
Right across the street from us, where the skate park is now.
Yeah.
And I mean, during that time, there was so much fear and so much just like everybody wanted to leave. Everybody was trying to get out. People were selling properties for cheap because, this was like a war zone and they wanted to get out. And here we are 5 years later and it's like a boom town. You can't find property here. Everybody's, everybody's asking crazy prices for their properties. Everybody's wanting to move in here. But there's an excitement and a hope for the future. It's just a totally different attitude than it was, just 5-6 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, you walk around Zonte and you feel safe. And that's a tangible difference than 5 years ago. Being able to walk and, neighbors, knowing each other's names and really having a sense of pride in their town. It's just unique. It's great.
I think we're going to try to get you a job with the tourism board. I got shot here, but I still want to live here.
I don't know if they'll want. I can smile about it, but I used to we'd run mission teams and do work projects.
Uh-huh.
And the year after I got shot, I continued to do those. So we would host them. We'd do our orientations, and I spoke a lot worse than I do even now. And
didn't you have a voice box?
So I had a voice box, like Jungle Tours out of Disneyland, and I'd sit them down and kind of give them orientation and try to kind of make light of the violence and say, as long as you know how to duck when you're driving in, instead of them laughing, just the terror on their faces is the guy that gets shot talking to him about safety in the country. But I've always felt safe here, which is ironic because of what happened to me. But I think it's because, I know it's because of the people. There's just a unique aspect. I've heard a lot of people talk about it as well with Salvadorans. They're the cream of the crop. They're amazing, and so they will help you and go up and beyond to serve one another. Some of the most welcoming people. So I think that's what's kept me coming down here for so long, is because I really feel at home when I come back. And I think if safety is not just the absence of violence, it's the feeling of connection to people, and knowing that people are willing to help. And El Salvador has that in spades.
So in addition to the continuing to lead the way in Punta Mongo for the Citadel of Hope, which is kind of like the Hope House version for Punta Mongo. Also recently, we talked about you helping out with some of the real estate projects and other exciting things that we have going on down here as the world wants to live in El Salvador and specifically in El Zonte. We're looking at the opportunities to play a part of that, and to in doing that, make sure that the opportunities and the resources continue to flow into the community. But a couple weeks ago, I had the crazy idea of buying a coffee farm up in the hills, and it's only 40 minutes from El Zonte, but it's at 5,000 feet, so the temperature is perfect year round. And we went and hiked around like 4 or 5 hours today. We got lost, and
well, it's like the Gilligan's 3-hour tour. It's supposed to be 30 minutes down and an hour back, but by the time we came back through all the pathways you took us on, we saw almost every ounce of your property. But I had never been up here until this week, but such a unique place. How do you call it? Chiltipan. Views that I think range from the airport almost to Guatemala, right? Just
beautiful ocean views in the coffee
views,
plantation.
Picking coffee. So I think the idea is to tie some of what we're doing in Mongo and Zonte and then up there to just introduce people to El Salvador in a unique way, and tie them into the Bitcoin project, and but also people that might want to live here, start opening up opportunities for them to buy properties in unique places, and then building experiences like we've done in Mongo to places like the coffee plantation, which is super cool. Like picking the coffee with you and then seeing you turn into this lifelong coffee farmer in all of like 2 weeks. Like you've been up there 3 times and you're already trying to figure out what type of coffee you want to grow on the property. But I mean, coffee has a long history in El Salvador, so I think it'd be cool.
Well, I think it has such a natural tie-in for Bitcoiners because there's a big movement within the Bitcoin community to be able to be self-sufficient, to be able to grow your own food, and also to have a plan, when it all hits the fan, that you have a place that you can go to and have the ability to sustain yourself. So I don't know if it's going to happen for sure, but the idea right now is to sell like 1 acre, lots on this. It's like 150 acre parcel, I think, that we bought up there, but to have 1 acre lots that people could own, but also to keep, probably half of it just as kind of wild, pristine area. It has some rainforest on it. It has, beautiful waterfalls and all of that. So I'm super excited about that. I think, obviously the beach is a major attraction. A lot of people want to live at the beach, but even for myself, as I get a little bit older, the idea of having a place with a perfect climate, with a view that's a little bit away from everything, has a huge draw. So I'm gonna be really excited to see that, whatever it comes of it. We're gonna do some camping up there.
What do you want to call it?
I don't know what we're gonna call it. Bitcoin Mountain,
Bitcoin Farms. Yeah.
So we'll have to work on that together.
Well, the waterfall that we went down to today was pretty unique. It's 60 feet, 70 feet.
Yeah,
up.
at least.
Yeah, and then springs coming, kind of shaped like a horseshoe, and all the springs that came out. And you felt like you were in, another place than the conventional idea you have of El Salvador. The hike back was something that I'm going to be paying for.
Yeah, we need to do some work on the improvement of the trails.
Well, and you need to work on your tour guide skills like that. Some of those paths you took were.
We're getting to know the property. It's property that big. It takes a while to get to know. Curious to any advice. You brought a young family here to El Salvador. There's a lot of people now that are looking to move to El Salvador. A lot of them with kids. what are some things that you would advise them to think about that maybe is not front of mind for them?
Yeah, I immediately just kind of go to the age that your kids are when you come. That when our kids were younger, our oldest was 7 and our youngest was 6 months. When we came, it was a lot easier. I mean, there was a lot of aspects that were difficult, but kids that age are pretty stoked on adventures. I used to take my kids out and give them machetes, and they would just hack away at vines, and they thought they were, in paradise. But the older that they got, and as they started getting to adolescence, it gets trickier. And so just having an awareness that this kind of idyllic picture of living down here with your family begins to change or can change as the kids get into the adolescence. That was our experience. I know some families, operate really well all the way through adolescence, and that's great. But our experience was that, some of the issues with school, friendships, family back in the States, those got a little trickier as they became adolescents. And that really was the driving factor in why we moved back. So I think, community is huge. Making sure that you build friendships, that you prioritize spaces that your kids can develop friendships, activities that they can be a part of that help them to grow and to learn. And
I think a lot of those things are probably a lot easier now than when you were here, just because there are so many foreigners moving in. Yeah. There are so many more opportunities for those sorts of things.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, we felt pretty isolated. We lived in the city. It was super dangerous. So very guarded on what you did. Remember we put our kids in soccer, and it lasted like 2 games because they were the only gringos, and the kids fouled them so badly. They had fun. The fact they didn't know Spanish. So they got that was a short run. But I think, just being conscientious too, that the kids are going to have their own experience, and that understanding that their experience is different sometimes than you as parents have. Because for us, it's easy to kind of have this picture of what you want your family to be, but the kids are actors in that and need to be listened to and brought into decision making and that sort of thing. And I think schooling becomes a major issue. So understanding how to school and those are a lot of the practical stuff. The longer you're here, it's the practical stuff that becomes either more difficult or will ground you here more.
Yeah, we have my kids both go to international schools. One's just called the international school. The other one's the American school. But it's, an hour commute from El Zonte that they're doing each way, and sometimes more with traffic. So, those things, while they're able to get a good education, it's not cheap. And the commute is pretty daunting also. So there are sometimes some trade-offs to living in paradise.
There is. I mean, my wife texted me today just because I've been traveling quite a bit, and she just thanked me for moving us down here when we did. I think we've now lived in the States going on 12 years since we lived down here, so it's been quite some time. And being able to see our kids go through, adolescence, and I've got 2 through college, 2 in college now, and their perspectives on life are deeply shaped by their time down here. So I'm still pretty bullish on families being crazy and not just doing it the normal way. It comes with danger, and it comes with a lot of uncertainty, but our kids, not kids, they're now adults into their 20s, to have a global perspective. They want to come back. They've come back a bunch. My sons both surf. All my kids surf.
Much better than us.
Much better than us. So I can see, the second generation wanting to come back in some form and participate in Bitcoin and in the projects and what we're doing. So seeing them want to be a part of it, and even just the way they see their own lives and how they operate, we've all gone through COVID, and it's been rough on a lot of people that have gone through it. And I think part of what's made our kids thrive is going through some of the challenges that they did here in El Salvador and being able to adapt. Your kids, if you're conscientious and aware and walking with them, the adaptability that comes as a fruit of living down here can be applied in their lives for forever. So it's been positive for sure.
So I know a few years ago, somebody that had heard about your story came to you and wanted to fund a book to be written about it. And so would love for you to be able to tell the audience where they can check out your book, or if you have any promo for it or anything that you want to, give them a little teaser of what it contains.
Yeah, we knew we wanted to write the story, so we were kind of waiting for it to be the right time. So about 6 years ago, became friends with a writer that was in Long Beach, California, Christy Crum, who had done a lot of kind of freelance work and did some teaching. I think associate kind of professor teaching in Long Beach, and she was looking to write her first book. We were wanting to kind of partner with somebody to do it, so we did a Kickstarter campaign, and we were able to probably raised $30,000 through the campaign, which was fun, and enough for her to be able to take about 6 months and devote herself to writing the book. She came down and toured not only El Salvador, but toured where I was shot. So we took Christy, her husband Paul, and my wife Dara, and we revisited the steps of me being shot. And without letting too much out of the book, out of the bag, I met one of the two shooters that had been a part of the shooting, because I had heard that they had turned their life around. And as part of the book, I wanted to go up and meet them. And so we went up and met them in 2015 and got to see, God take something that was pretty awful and use it to turn around not just his life, but his family. So the story, Couple of Country and the Stubborn Quest for Hope, really is a story about my wife and I and our journey and how we came to El Salvador. Really highlights El Salvador, and a lot of the stuff I talk about in terms of how great a country is, you'll find in the book. And then, the Stubborn Quest for Hope is, that challenge to continue to hope and to push forward as, challenges come and as the shooting come. And so, we wrote it. We did some promotion. It's on Amazon, so if you look it up by Shot and the author Christy Crum Richards, you can find it. But I think it's encouraging for people, in your space, people in Bitcoin space wanting to come to El Salvador and want to know what it's like for a family to kind of go through that process. And a lot of the book also talks about what the move was like, what it was like for us to live down here as a family. So I think it'd be a good read. Just look it up on Amazon.
Sweet. No, I have read it. I can attest that it's really a remarkable story. So definitely encourage everybody to check it out. Where else can viewers find out more about you? Are you on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter, but you're the one who taught me that's where everybody from Bitcoin is on. So my handle is, I think it is just Peter DeSoto. So it's pretty simple. And then I have a website, peterdesoto.com, where I've got some of the stuff I've done over the years and some video that has some of the speaking I've done and the book and a little bit more information about that, as well as our property and the stuff that we're doing out in Punta.
Oh yeah, we've got to pimp the property we have on Airbnb.
Yeah.
Andy, can you put one of those pictures up again? We do have one of the most amazing properties that you'll ever see. The one in Punta from the beginning.
Although it keeps selling out, so yeah, go quick.
It's right there it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
just
paradise.
it really is one of the most remarkable places, I think, in the world. Just the way it sits on the point. You have the water wrapped around on both sides of you. And
well, what I'd say too for your like Bitcoiners, if you want to learn to surf, what's unique, and you can kind of see it there, is you can sit up, have a glass of wine, and watch your kids surf this really sandy, safe part of the break, and then the world-class point break, probably 300, 400, 500 yards further west. So it's this unique place where you can enjoy both a safer place to learn how to surf, and then as you grow, make your way out to the point. So it's been cool. It's my favorite place.
Stay away from the point. There's too many surfers out there already.
Yeah, the point's too treacherous. too much.
And then also, just in case there's anybody in the building field here, Peter is a lighting expert and can help you with all your lighting needs, right?
There's a segue. Yeah, I've done about 15 years in architectural lighting. So my business is working with architects, developers, and designers to do a lot of multifamily and hospitality and high-end residential. So
and they employ a lot of people in El Salvador with their back office stuff. So you can be supporting what's happening here in El Salvador, including some of them that are paid directly in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So
hit me up. Yeah, for sure.
Well, Pete, it's been, it's just so fun to have you. We've been, I feel like, lifetime friends at this point, and so much history here together. So when we started the podcast, you were one of the first ones. I was like, I can't wait to sit down and just chat through the journey that we've been on. And you've been an integral part of Bitcoin Beach without a lot of people realizing it. And so being able to kind of share the impact you've had, and then just let people know that, for their podcast or other, speaking engagements, that your story is a very inspirational one. So hopefully they'll have you up on stage instead of me, because I think you do a much better job.
Well, hey, thanks, Mike. And just also, it's been cool to see your own growth too. I think what people don't know about Mike is just the level that you feel for the country, that a lot of this was, not all of it, was based out of a true heart for Zonte and for the country and for people to have better lives. And so I think a lot of that can kind of get lost in the buzz around Bitcoin, but to see you jump on the opportunity that you've had to bring it to the country and to continue to work the way that you have, hats off to you, man. It's been cool to be your friend and to see kind of you develop into this figure that is driving some change and doing some good stuff. So keep it up.
Oh, super thankful that God's given us this opportunity, and we're kind of just along for the ride.
God bless our wives.
Yes.
Oh man, jeez, they've had to put up with a lot. Did you hear that, Dara? Oh, for sure.
Yeah, well, the one thing we do need to do is we both need to get out surfing more, so that next time when we put a current picture of ourselves up, it doesn't look embarrassing. Yeah. So, well, thanks, Pete. Looking forward. I'm sure we'll have you back here on the podcast with updates on everything that's going on in Punta Mongo and the Citadel of Hope, the version of Hope House that you're kind of spearheading down there, and we'll probably be maybe 6 months from now, get you back on here.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.